Welcome to Bridging the Gap Law, Therapy, and Justice.
Hey everyone, welcome back to an all new episode of Bridging the Gap Law, Therapy, and Justice. With attorney and licensed marriage and family therapist Caitlin Burgess, I'm your host, Mike Leon. You know, Caitlin's work, it brings together the law, mental health, and forensic practice to help families and professionals understand the complex realities that children face during and after litigation. Today's episode, we're going to be exploring that trauma-informed parenting plans. Caitlin's going to explain, what they look like, what they are, why they matter, and how thoughtful structure can really support a child's sense of safety. Caitlin, it's good to see you as always. It's always about the child, right? And that's the first thing that always comes to mind for me. But when you think about a parenting plan that's truly trauma, informed, what are some of the core principles that kind of help guide how the schedule is shaped?
Yeah, so I really focus on trauma in my practice. I always have. I started working with the dependency courts and foster care with children had been removed from the home, and so I have seen firsthand, how impactful and negatively impactful trauma is on children and their healthy development. So the child's safety, Mike, is always paramount. So the emotional, psychological, physical safety of the child in any proceeding, whether it be family law or juvenile dependency court, is paramount. And so in family law, that child's safety is paramount to parent preferences, convenience, what's convenient for the parent. And even over equal time. So it's all about the child's safety.
For the children out there who've experienced this trauma, and they have these heightened sensitivities now to transitions, what makes the transitions an important focus when we're designing a schedule for these families?
Yeah, so trauma really disrupts children's sense of safety. And so that the heightened sensitivity that can occur because of the trauma can lead to emotional dysregulation and behavioral concerns, and transitions between households are generally pretty tough for kiddos here, and so um, we're trying to make it as smooth as possible for those children. So um, with younger kids, 0 to 3, you want sort of more frequent contact with a parent, and then gradually, as the child gets older, developmentally, when you go into the teen years, you're wanting more flexibility as the child's focus goes on to their activities and so forth. So we just keep in mind the sense of safety. So if there has been abuse, or if there's been substance abuse issues that have been impactful to the child, often the courts will order that the transitions be supervised, even when a parent has unsupervised visits with a child. Sometimes the conflict between the parents can be detrimental to the children, and the transitions can heighten that conflict. So they'll have a supervisor for transitions only. So we're just trying to make it as smooth as possible for the child, and developmentally appropriate as well in terms of frequency of transitions.
Yeah. Well, Caitlin, I mean, it takes two to tango, right? So, and you got two parents that are involved in this, and I'm sure parents worry about adjusting the schedule and the child's emotional needs. It could look like some semblance of favoritism, or at least imbalance, right, on the surface. Like, how do you kind of help reframe that idea that this is like customization as a support? It's not judgment.
Yeah, so I really try to again bring it back to the children, and the core principles guiding decisions in family law. So, and reassure them that trauma informed adjustments are often phased. And what I mean by that is you'll also often see in a family court parenting plan what's called a step up parenting plan. So let's say that one of the parents has perpetrated abuse either on a child or on a parent, and has started out with maybe only supervised visits, right? And so maybe after 12 weeks, that will move up to one overnight visit that might not be supervised or supervised by a family member, for instance. And then gradually we see a step up phased plan. Sometimes that goes to equal custody, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm basically trying to explain to the parents that the courts and the experts who make recommendations based phased in parenting plans based on evidence. For example, they take into account the unique developmental needs of the children, or in a particular family, or they look at adverse childhood experiences and the research around adverse experiences, which are called ACEs in family law. And there are certain childhood experiences, divorce being one of them, incarceration of a parent being another, mental health issues being another, that impact a child's development. So I just try to provide a lot of psychoeducation to let the parent know, hey, this is about the kids, and we got to do what's right for them based on the research and the evidence-based findings.
Caitlin, can you share, maybe again without getting intricate into the details of the case specific, but could you share a situation that illustrates a little bit more of what we've been talking about, of how like a trauma informed adjustment to a parenting plan really helped the child regain that stability?
Yeah, so this is all a practice. I like to think of my practice in law and my practice in psychology. It's a practice, it's not a perfection. So I might make recommendations, or that a court adopts. And well, as an evaluator, perhaps I could make custody recommendations, perhaps for a step up plan, and maybe the court adopts it, and then the child is not responding well to it. Maybe the child is regressing. The behaviors, maybe they were a little one who had been potty trained, who's no longer potty trained, or is starting to have nightmares or
Right.
bedwetting, and then maybe we need to pull back a bit. So in cases, sometimes you see a child regressing in the care of another parent, and then maybe you need to take a look at that and make adjustments. So it's always a work in progress. We don't hold crystal balls. We're always trying to do what's best for the kids. And so like a treatment plan, when I make a treatment plan for my family therapy cases, for example, it's a living, breathing document. I can make changes to that plan as my work progresses. And so too with a visitation schedule. If a child isn't doing well, I think you need to go back to court or back to your parenting coordinator and make adjustments as needed.
Caitlin, let me ask you on something you said there. Let's talk about children that are in different stages of development, right? Or temperaments. I'll just use me as an example, even though I'm not getting divorced. I have an atypical daughter and a typical daughter, right? And they're different ages, 7 and 5. Like how do you approach tailoring the plan so it fits the child rather than trying to cram in a one size fits all model?
Yeah, so you always need to take a look at each individual child. So children who are neurodivergent, who have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, commonly referred to as ADHD, or maybe they have some learning disabilities, or any type of special needs, you're going to need to take a look at that, and that's going to need to be considered in your parenting plan. So I referred earlier to the general principle is for infants and toddlers, for example 0 to 3, to have frequent and short contact with, for example, the parent who's not the primary parent, or the if there is equal custody. Sometimes there is equal custody with kids that age, but generally it would be a schedule like 2 to 3. It's called, like 2 days with one parent, 2 days with another. When you come to preschoolers, age 3 to 5, they can have more overnights, for example, with the non custodial parent. And then school age children, 6 to 12, you have larger blocks of time to accommodate their school routines and homework. Generally with school age children, I can see a week on, week off sometimes, but also a 2 to 5. So 2 days, like a Monday and Tuesday with one parent, Wednesday and Thursday, or Monday and Tuesday, and the transition occurring on Wednesday, and then Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, and then alternating with 5 days, if that makes sense. Like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. it can get complicated, but what I'm trying, yeah, trying to explain it briefly, you sort of need charts to lay it out. But what
Right.
I'm trying to say is that children are at different developmental stages, and each individual child is different. So we can't have cookie cutters for these kids, and that's why sometimes the courts will order here in California brief focused assessments or parenting plan evaluations so that an evaluator who's specially trained can actually dive into the family in more detail. The judges really don't have time to take such a close look. So what I'm trying to say, Mike, is special needs of children are taken into consideration, neurodivergency, and the age of children and where they're at in their terms of their development.
Let me ask you on that front because it is a lot to digest, right? And kids have their own school routines, medical care, sleep routines and habits and things like that. All of this is going to influence, right? Like what we can realistically manage. So, amongst all of those examples I gave, which of these practical considerations tend to kind of have the biggest impact on building that supportive plan that we've been talking about?
Yes, the sleep trends are important. It's important a child is able to get a good night's sleep, because that really impacts, all sorts of developmental tasks for children, their growth, how they can learn, their focus. So I think sleep is a big one. But let's say medical care, right? It might not be a heightened consideration with a very healthy child, but if you have a child who maybe is diabetic or has some significant health concerns, that would come into play significantly. School routines, you don't want to disrupt those. I mean, I think they're all very important, with greater emphasis put on one or another, depending on the needs or special needs of the children involved.
Kaylin, one more question on the children before we wrap. And it's more about, I know some children need more stability, like we were mentioning before, with respect to the increasing transitions. Some benefit from gradual exposure, right, with respect to that. What guides the pacing of the change in that trauma informed schedule?
Yeah, so you always have to look at how the child is doing. So, increased or intensified emotional dysregulation in a child, let's say the child's been doing fine and then suddenly they're spending overnights with a parent they haven't had a lot of contact with. And, you can't expect some. Uh, changes in a child as they adjust, but if it's intensified and an ongoing regression, as we talked about. Um, so escalation of avoidance behaviors, skills that they once mastered, they regress and can no longer, master them, such as potty training for really small children. So all of those would be red flags. Clinginess, suddenly becoming very clingy. Those are red flags that maybe something's not going on, especially if that is an ongoing issue and lasts for, many months without getting better. Then you need to take a look and say, hey, do we need to pull back, or what's going on with this child? And so make adjustments accordingly.
Kaylin, as we wrap here on this episode, for that listener that's still trying to understand whether the current plan supports their child's emotional needs, like what are some signs that they should be looking for that can kind of indicate it may be time to reconsider the structure?
Yeah, what I mentioned. So, hypervigilance, attention seeking behaviors, emotional dysregulation, clinginess, bedwetting, enuresis is the technical term for that. Those would be concerns that the child is not adjusting, and there could be something in the family environment that is causing regression or some of these behaviors. So, it's all about how your kiddo is doing in the parenting plan. And if your child isn't doing well in the parenting plan, it needs to be revisited.
Yep. Simple advice. It sounds simple to me. Caitlin, thank you so much for the time and the insights. I appreciate it as always.
Yeah, and it's actually super complex. It can sound simple, but it's complicated when it really comes down to these families and these family dynamics and the preferences of the parents and so forth. But hey,
Yeah.
it was really nice to see you again, and thanks so much.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Bridging the Gap Law Therapy and Justice. If you want to learn more about what we just discussed with Caitlin, you want to learn all about her interdisciplinary, clinical, legal, and forensic work, do me a favor, visit CaitlinBurgess.com to reach out to Caitlin and the team. And do me one more favor before you go, hit like, hit subscribe, leave a review, comment, share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. I'm Mike Leon. We'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.